All eyes were on me as I stood at the altar with a large bouquet of flowers in my arms, cradled like a baby, symbolic of the many children Jeremy and I would have together. I looked around me and was gratified by the crowd of family and friends that had gathered to witness our special day. I noticed even then that most of the guests were from my side, but Jeremy had never been one for family. In all the years we had been together, he had hardly ever even visited his family and relatives, so it was not surprising that there were practically none of them there. I took a deep, satisfied breath, trying not to sway in time with the DJ's music. My day had finally come. We had only been dating for a few months when Jeremy proposed for the first time, promising his eternal love, and even though years had passed since that first proposal, he had reaffirmed his devotion each year. Every year he had made an excuse for pushing the wedding till the next, but though I was a little impatient and frustrated, I accepted either that the time was not right, or that he really could not provide for me the way I deserved, or that he needed to get a promotion, or to rent a bigger apartment. But whenever the time came, he promised I would get the wedding that I deserved. And so I waited, and bore the irritation of my parents and ridicule of society. It had become a running joke among my friends that though I had the first proposal, I would be the last bride. But none of that mattered to me. I was willing to wait because I knew the quality of man that I had chosen. Jeremy was ambitious and driven and had high tastes. But he was from a humble background. His father had been a city sanitation officer who had not been able to put him through college. But I had had a crush on him all through our senior year, so when he told me he loved me the shy, awkward, skinny girl, I believed my love had matured, and I accepted. Without my parents' knowledge, I began to give him my pocket money, and then, when we got into college, I let him move in with me in the house my parents rented for me off campus. Then I dropped out of school after at his insistence and against my parents' advice and worked full-time as a clerk to support him during his final 2 years of college. No sacrifice was too great because we loved each other. I stood there with my heart beating the drums of love as I waited to receive the reward of all my efforts, but suddenly my face turned as white as my dress when I saw Jeremy climb up the steps to the altar holding the hand of Liza, my best friend. She was also wearing white, which confused me for a moment. She was my maid of honor, and I had asked her to wear white, but with a dark green bolero jacket over it. She had taken off the jacket and was walking hand in hand with my fiancé, holding a single long-stem red rose in her free hand and looking like she herself was the bride. I felt bile rise in my throat as my mouth opened in horror. I stood frozen to the spot, unable to move a muscle. From the corner of my eye, I saw my uncle jump to his feet with his face contorted in fury. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. "Is this some sort of joke?" Jeremy was walking down the aisle now. His look told me it was not a joke. Liza had a smirk in her face. "I'm marrying Liza, not Hera," he announced to the guests, then he turned and looked at me. "I'm sorry, but I wish you had taken all the hints I gave you. If you had, you would not have been shamed today." I heard Mother's voice raised loud, I heard Jeremy's father shout his name, and I heard and saw nothing else till I woke in bed in the hotel room where with my head in my mother's lap. She was quietly weeping. I warned her. She was saying to my other bridesmaids and aunts. I warned her that this boy was not good. I knew he was a scoundrel. As soon as he got the oil company job, I saw how he changed even towards me, just because our family has fallen on hard times. "Mom," I said, sitting up despite feeling dizzy. "Mom, I'm sorry." "What is the point of being sorry? Will it remove our embarrassment? The whole town is laughing at us. You wasted 6 years on him, you were living with him, you dropped out of school, and for what?" I closed my eyes as the initial feelings of shame washed over me. She was right, and I had been blind. When I was useful to Jeremy because my parents had some money, he had treated me well. But now that he had a good education and I was a dropout for my husband, family, I was no longer good enough for him. Perhaps I had never been good enough for him except as a stepping stool to his ambitions, and like a fool I had gone along blindly. Jeremy was right. There had been hints, but I had ignored all of them over the years. Not even his relationship with Liza was surprising to me. Looking back, I could see how it had started and how it had developed right under my nose, but I had closed my eyes to all the signs. What was the point of having perfect vision if you could only see the past? It was time to get wise. My bridesmaids had begun to change their clothes and pack up, and my mother, seeing that I was well, ordered me to do the same and come home. Then she left. As I took off my dress and put it in the bag, I considered its cost, the cost of the hotel room, all the expenses, none of which Jeremy had contributed to. I had effectively been marrying myself, for all the effort or interest Jeremy had put into the event. That was when the cold realization hit me, and I sobbed. My friends gathered around me, hugging and consoling me. But I felt in that moment that nothing would ever heal my broken heart. Fast forward 3 years, and I had just graduated from the university. I had gone back to school and completed my degree, and I was now considering my options: go into the job market or start a business of my own. I had all but forgotten about Jeremy and Liza. Of course, they were no longer part of our friend group, so no one ever spoke about them anymore, and I did not care to know either. I had to move on with my life. My friends advised me to sue Jeremy for breach of promise, and I considered it for a long time. However, I honestly did not have the heart to do it. I wanted the entire saga to be over. I did not want to start a fight with Jeremy or Liza over a broken heart. When I broached the matter with my mother and brother, they also advised me against it because already I was a laughing stock in the society. For a while, social media had even carried the news of my disgrace, and even if people generally blamed Liza and Jeremy for their betrayal, they censored me for being a fool. The last thing my family wanted now was for me to rehash the embarrassment. After all, although we were not celebrities, our name was worth something thanks to my late father. I was now 3 years behind my peers, since I had given up those 2 years for him. Eventually, I decided to take a job and save my money for investment. That is how my parents had made their wealth, which unfortunately they had now lost due to a downturn in the economy and a series of bad luck. Being the younger child and only daughter, they had focused on teaching my brother the principles of the business, and I had just been expected to marry well and enjoy my allowances, and my inheritance at last. But my father had passed away with the stress of his businesses folding, and there had been no inheritance to speak of. What little I had foolishly spent on Jeremy. As of now, I had barely been able to pay my university fees, and I had taken out a student loan. I had less than nothing. My brother was married and had his own family as well as my mother to look after, and was struggling too much for me to depend on him. Jeremy had been my plan, and that had failed miserably. As I had no responsibilities apart from caring for myself, and since I still lived at home, I was able to save up a few thousands within a few months, and so I decided to try my hand at investing. My plan was to invest in small businesses and help them grow, to share the extra profits with them. It was a good business plan, but for someone as naive as me, it was full of risks which I did not see at the time. Foolishly, without seeking the advice of my people, I decided to go it alone, and began to scout around the city and decided to invest in a street restaurant selling fried chicken. It was owned by a man and his wife. When I presented the offer to the couple, they looked at each other. "Thank you so much," the husband answered with a very wide, toothy smile. "We have been looking for someone to sponsor this business for a long time. Haven't we, my dear?" He turned to his wife for confirmation. "Yes," she said, her eyes moving shiftily between her husband and me. "Fine, we can sign a contract, and you will give me a list of the things you need. My terms are simple. I will get 50% of the profits until the investment is repaid, and for the next 5 years." "That is very good," the husband replied with the same smile. "Okay then. I will see you on Monday. Please prepare the list, and I will go over it, after which we will sign the contract." I was very happy with the ease of the whole transaction. There had been no haggling with my terms, we were all in perfect harmony, or so I thought, and the couple was so nice to me, they even packed some of the unappetizing chicken for me to take home. Looking back now, I can see how their very demeanor should have warned me of their untrustworthiness. The very next day, being a Friday, they called me at about 3:30 p.m. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, sounding a bit desperate. I have sent you the list of ingredients we need, and the most important ones on it are seasonal, and the season is about to end. As a matter of fact, the last market for the year where we can buy them is coming up in the early hours of Saturday. Is it possible to send the money now so we can stock up? Otherwise, for the rest of the year we will not be able to get these ingredients as they are only sold in this region of the country. I was a bit taken aback. I did not realize that fried chicken needed such special ingredients, I said. It does, and we have not been able to afford them, which is why our chicken did not taste good. Now that we have an investor, we are going to show you just how good fried chicken can taste. But we need the money today because the market opens at 5 a.m. and closes by 8 a.m. tomorrow. It is the last chance to buy. Everyone is going to go there, and if we are not early, we will not even be able to get the quantity we need, and your investment will be wasted. I considered the matter, and decided to send the money with a caveat. Fine. I will send the money, but that means that I will come to your place tomorrow morning to sign the contract. No, since we are taking the money, you should come tonight. Let us sign it tonight. But send the money now before the bank closes. I was happy to hear this as it showed the man's honesty. I transferred the money, and sat down to write out the contract. I finished around 9 p.m., but I did not rush because I knew that the couple lived just above their shop. There was no one there. The lights were out, but the door was open. I walked in to find the furniture and utensils intact, but with no sign that it was used that day. I tried to call the man or his wife, but I got no response. I found the way to the stairs and went over to their home. The door was open, but the place was empty. A few dirty dishes lay in the sink, some food in the little fridge, but all personal things like clothes, pictures, or anything else that could be used to identify the residents were gone. I rushed downstairs in a panic and asked neighboring shopkeepers, and all had the same answer. They left this afternoon. They said they were going back to their hometown. But where are they from? I really don't know. They are a bunch of shifty people. I know for a fact that they are behind in their rent, and I have called their landlord to let him know that they have run away. When I ran back home crying to my mother, she consoled me. But when my tears were dried, she scolded me roundly for being so foolish as to invest in a business that I knew nothing about. I did not even know how to cook, so why would I invest in a fried chicken business? That was my first bad investment, and there were several more to follow. It took me a while to raise the money to invest again, but this time I was wiser. I took the advice of my brother, who had been trained by my father, and was encouraged by my mother. Fortunately, with time, the good investments outnumbered the bad, and I was soon bringing in enough money in profits to allow me to quit the jobs I had taken along the way, and by the time I was 30, I was quite comfortable. Not rich, but I had my own successful business and I was well on my way to being a millionaire. My mother did not only advise me about money matters, she was also my advisor in life and my backbone in practically everything. And, of course, my love life, where she inserted herself with or without my permission. Every day she would drop hints about finding a good husband. "Good morning, Mummy." I greeted her as I came down to breakfast in the house that my brother and I had bought her. Since our family's fall, we had been forced to move into a tiny rented flat, and my brother had been forced to immediately move out to make his own way. Over the last few years, however, he was also doing much better, and with my own business success, we had made the down payment on a tasteful 2-bedroom duplex in an estate just outside of the city. "I can't eat much, I'm in a bit of a rush this morning," I said as I sat down and took a large bite out of one of the sandwiches she had put on my plate. "You are always in a hurry," she replied. "You are a young woman, you should eat enough to maintain your curves. If you get too thin, no man will look at you." "Mummy, I'm too busy to worry about men looking at me," I replied, slightly exasperated at the repeated conversation. "You should be worried. Unless you plan to marry that new chair you are always talking about," she said. "If you knew how much I spent on that chair, you would know that it is more reliable than most men I know." I laughed. "Not all men are unreliable. Just eat and gain some weight. You are too thin already. You are working too hard." Bye, Mummy, I said as I went out the door, only stopping to slip my feet into my red heels. Hey, she called, let me pack it for you to take along. I was already walking out the outer door. My driver was holding the door open for me. I gave him a few instructions about work as we drove down the highway into the city, but apart from that we were silent. He parked in front of an old high-rise building off the city center. It was old-fashioned, a bit gaudy, and the rent was cheap, but it was still distinguished. Most of the big businesses in the central business district had started here and then moved as their new, modern buildings were finished, selling or leasing their old quarters. I took the lift to the second floor and stepped off. The floor was spacious and had been reconfigured to fit two firms, rather than one. My firm was on the left with Hera by Finances boldly emblazoned across the double doors. There was no place for humility in business. I walked past the glass partitions and watched my staff already at work in the semi-open floor plan till I got to my own office, carved off from the rest of the office area with tastefully finished wood and concrete. My secretary said hello as I came in. She was many years older than me and we had a somewhat casual relationship, since she was almost as old as my mother. She had worked as a secretary for several years before she resigned due to her age, wanting a less fast-paced environment. I gained a lot from her experience, but having someone so much older than one working in that capacity has its own drawbacks, and mine was that she had teamed up with my mother and was forever trying or set me up with dates, and even going as far, in some cases, as leaving room in my calendar open so I had no excuse but accept proffered dates. Today was no different. Hello Kathy, hello Mississippi, bye. Your mother just called. I stopped surprised, since I was coming from home, and had my cell phone with me. My mother? What did she want? She wanted to ask you to come home early tonight because she has invited some of your neighbors to dinner. She responded with an innocent look that did not fool me a bit. Did she specify if this neighbors have an eligible bachelor son? Her eyes widened in exaggerated innocence. Oh, I don't know. You will have to call to ask her, although she said that she will be out all day at the spa and her phone will be off. I threw my head back and stamped a foot in frustration. For goodness sake. I half wailed in exasperation. I have a meeting tonight with a new prospect. Didn't X and Company invite me to drinks at 7 p.m. tonight? They called to upgrade it to a dinner tomorrow at their new restaurant. I knew I had been beaten. I guessed that Kathy and my mother had been planning this ambush for days in advance. This was their modus operandi. I wagged my finger at her. I know you had something to do with that. I'm aware that the CEO of X and Company is a bachelor. Oh, you accuse me of so many things, she complained with a sparkle in her eyes, and picking up a folder, she followed me into my office. I met with the neighbors that evening. The matriarchs were both from old families, and although ours had fallen on hard times, our reputation was intact, thanks to my father who had ensured that he had no debts either in business or personally when he died. And my brother and I were able to give my mom a bit of her former lifestyle back, so that she could at least afford certain luxuries again, and she was often in the company of those of her former friends as had not cast her off due to her sudden fall from grace. The neighbor that was dining with us tonight was also a widow who had given up her mansion to her son and moved to a beautiful little duplex in our vicinity where she could, according to her, live like she used to do as a little girl with simplicity and without being embarrassed to dress shabbily whenever she wanted to without having to keep up appearances. Her only child, a son, had inherited his father's company. It was not very large, but it was big enough to keep them in sufficient class and style. She was in search of a wife for him who would not distract him from attaining the vision of his father. My own mother was looking for a man who would take care of me and give me security. They were a match made in heaven, and so they were determined that their children were too. I got home early thanks to the bullying of my secretary. Yes, go and have a bath. My mother said in response to my hello, as she pushed me back towards the stairs. Have a bath? Why should I bathe now? I said, whining playfully, resisting, trying to be difficult. She hustled me out of the kitchen where she and her help were putting finishing touches to the dinner, and up the stairs. Oh, don't start that. You are not a child. Go bathe and change into the new dress I put on your bed. You have lost so much weight lately, you should be wearing a size smaller. Wash your hair too and just brush it straight, there is no time to curl it. I tried to protest but could not get a word in before she pushed me into my room and shut the door behind me. I stood there in some frustration. Although I loved and was grateful to my mother for her support throughout the ups and downs of my life, I was actually getting tired of her numerous blind dates. She had been playing at this game since I graduated university. She said she was determined that I would not become a spinster while she was alive just because a certain, unnamed vagabond had hurt me. She had kept tabs on Jeremy and Liza though, and every now and then she would update me on the latest juicy scandal happening in their family. For instance, I knew that their marriage had been unsupported by his parents, particularly his mother, who had been grateful to me for seeing her only son through university at the cost of mine. And though they had tied the knot after the guests on my side and several guests on his had left, he had never been welcome back in his parents' house. Liza, on the other hand, though she did not mind destroying my event, resented taking my place at the altar because her family were not there, and there was no one to make a fuss over her and give her gifts and red packets. Her own family had cast her off after her disgrace, and she found herself ostracized with only Jeremy as her support. Then came the fights because he kept late hours, and since she snatched him from me, she could not trust that someone else would not snatch him from her. Their marriage lasted for 3 short, bitter years and then dissolved. It did not help that their only child was sickly, making it impossible for her to work since she needed full-time care. They divorced the year I graduated university, and as far as my mother knew, neither had remarried. I pushed the thoughts out of my mind. I was in a different place in my life. I was definitely wiser, and not going to be taken in by a handsome face anymore. I had already been tried by several of those handsome faces since by finances had begun to prosper, and I could tell those who loved me from those who were after my wealth. I had a bath and washed my hair as my mom instructed and put on the perfume she placed on my bed. It was lovely, with a mild scent. Then I opened the dress bag on the bed. Wow! I breathed when I saw the soft, pink, chiffon gown. She is really taking this date serious. And she has really good taste. This is beautiful. I ran my hands over the fabric. It must have been expensive. Where did she get the money for this? She should not be spending her money on me. I will have to pay her back. But first, I put the dress on and considered myself in the full-length mirror. Wow! I look girly. Who would guess that I'm 30? I look just like I looked at 22. I brushed my hair quickly, paying special attention to my bangs, and spent a few more moments admiring myself in the mirror, but then I remembered why I was dressing up, and felt the same misgivings well up in my mind again. I don't need a husband now. I need to build my business up first. I don't need this distraction. But I came down in time to hear the doorbell ring at 7 o'clock, and I joked to myself that they must have been waiting at the door, counting down the seconds before pushing the bell. The housekeeper, now changed into fresh clothes and with a crisp white apron around her waist, opened the door to a beautiful little elderly woman, a few years older than my mother, but with beautiful kind eyes and a laughing mouth. She was dressed in a beautiful off-white loose-fitting linen gown with flared sleeves ending at her wrists. She looked like a fashion model for older ladies. I loved her immediately. Behind her, a tall man with thick black-rimmed glasses walked in carrying a basket with a look of boredom on his plain round face. He looked like he was also being forced against his will by his mother to be at the dinner. "Welcome, welcome, please come in," my mother practically sang, stepping forward happily to receive them. "I hope we are not too early," said the pretty lady. "Oh no, you are just on time. Please sit down. I have some tea. This is the tea that I was telling you about. I got it from Mrs. Lee. She said her daughter-in-law brought it with her from Tibet. It is really lovely. Martha, bring the tea things quickie." My mother was her usual outgoing self, generous, welcoming and warm. I hung around just outside their circle and she looked up at me. "Hera," she said, "come and meet Mrs. Chen. She has come especially to meet you. This is her son." My name is Anderson, said the man, trying to hide the bored look still on his face. Hello, Mrs. Chen, I said, stepping forward with a bow of respect. Hello, my dear, sit down, you look so pretty in that dress. Your mother said you are 30 years old, you don't look it at all. I remember when I was as young and pretty as you. She was teasing and obviously fishing for compliments. Even now you are prettier than me, I said, and she laughed. The evening was going well. There was no tension except from Anderson, whose face was alternatively interested and awkward as our mothers boasted about their children. Dinner was served, it was good, and then my mother urged me to take Anderson outside to get some air after the heavy meal. It was so obvious that both Anderson and I laughed awkwardly as we went out the dining room door and onto the patio beyond. I had taken a good look at him and I thought he was not unattractive. He was plain, but he was tall and toned with a good physique. He walked well too, upright, but without any pretensions. He was mature when he spoke, he sounded like he was a man in control of his life. What are you thinking? He said suddenly, catching me off guard. What I'm thinking? Oh, nothing really. It just crossed my mind that you look like a person who is in control over his life. He gave a hump of slightly amused indignation. I control nothing. My mother bullied me into coming here. Mine too. I laughed, and he laughed with me. The ice was broken and we had a good, long, comfortable talk. I told him about my company, how I started and how far I had come, and he told me about his. He was 35 years old, the current CEO and largest shareholder by inheritance of Chen Manufacturing Limited. He was a widower, his wife had died 7 years ago in childbirth, taking his newborn daughter along with her, and he had simply not been able to recover. I told him about Jeremy and his betrayal, but brushed over my struggle to overcome it. We are two broken people, he said after a little silence. Yeah. We are warriors. I responded, following his eyes to look at the stars and enjoying the silence and the cool breeze. He chuckled. That's a better way of looking at things, right? Yes. After he and his mother had left, my mother turned to me to get my thoughts. Well? What do you think of him? She was direct. I like him. I answered. Anderson began to call at the house after that, and then to drop by my office to take me to lunch. I returned his visits to the delight of his mother and mine. Soon we were officially dating, and our mothers began to dream about our wedding. Miss Bai, your 11 o'clock is here, my secretary said, stepping into my office and closing the door. She knew I liked to be briefed about my visitors before I spoke to them. Yeah, who is he again? I asked. It was only 10:55 a.m. and I was tired already, unsurprisingly. It was Monday morning, and Anderson and I had sat outside on my mother's patio talking until the early hours. It was amazing how much we had connected in the 3 months since we had met. Neither of us was a starry-eyed youth, so we discussed life, business, the future, everything, and we were kindred spirits, our ideas were much the same. I felt safe with him, I felt like I could trust him with myself as much as with my business without fear, and we always had a lot to say to each other at the weekends, which is when we both had time out of our schedules to talk. It is a Mr. Yao, a representative of New Horizons. They are a new oil speculation company. They have only been in business for 2 years, and based on their books, they are not doing very well. They bought some oil licenses in Nigeria, but the oil fields they speculated in were dry. They need money for another attempt, but there has been rumors of mismanagement in the company, so they have been unable to secure any more financing from their usual financier Dongyan Group. Okay, let him in, I said and rubbed my hands over my face trying to wake myself up. When I looked up, Jeremy was standing in front of me. I felt like rubbing my eyes again, like I was seeing a vision. Jeremy? I asked. Hello, Hera, he said awkwardly. I got to my feet and came around the table to shake his hand, smiling. I led him to the couches and we sat down. I felt no ill will towards him. Too much time had passed for me to continue to hold on to the past. He looked lean, like he was struggling, and a bit haggard. Looking keenly, I could see that his suit had seen better days, and his shoes were neat, but were old-fashioned, like he bought them at the Goodwill store. "How have you been?" I asked. "How is Liza?" I knew they were divorced, but I did not want him to think that I made it my business to know his affairs. "I'm fine, thanks." "Liza is fine too. I heard you guys had a baby?" "Yes, we had a daughter, but she was sickly. She passed away last year." I was genuinely sorry to hear this. No matter what he and Liza had done, their daughter was innocent. "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said. "Thanks. Also, Liza and I are divorced. We have been divorced for several years." "I see," I said non-committedly. "Well, you are doing very well for yourself. I saw your name on the door. Hera by financiers. Very good." "Yes," I said with a smile. "When my director asked me to come here, I was afraid that you would not listen to me. I told him so, but he would not listen. So here I am. I want to begin by saying I'm sorry about the past, Hera." I felt my body stiffen. I had put the past behind me, and I did not appreciate it being dredged up again. What did he expect me to do? Absolve him of his treachery? Did this little, verbal apology today make up for his betrayal 8 years ago? I took a deep breath. "Let's leave the past in the past," I said. "Today we are discussing business. Why are you here to see me?" About 30 minutes later our meeting was over and he had given me many company documents to go through. "So, what do you think?" he asked. "Do we have a chance at your investment?" I was surprised that he would ask. "I have to first go through your documents and do some research into your company before I decide," I said. "But you know me. You know that your investment is safe with me." I was even more surprised to hear this, since the last time we interacted he was betraying and disgracing me, but I decided not to pursue the matter. Even if my mother offers me an investment opportunity, I will still do my due diligence. "Can I take you out to dinner tonight?" Not for me, but just to give me an opportunity to talk more about the investment. "No, Jeremy, this is not how these things work, unless you are trying to use undue influence on me. If I lose my investment, are you willing to bear the responsibility? Are you saying it is possible to use, as you said, undue influence, on you?" he said, leaning forward with a charming smile and a wink. Okay, no problem. "I will give you time," he said when he saw my surprised look. Then he offered his hand for a shake, but he held my hand a moment too long, and looked directly and meaningfully into my eyes. Then he took his leave. I had been holding my disgusted feelings in check, but as soon as the door shut behind him, I shuddered and moved to my toilet to wash my hands. I felt sullied. A week later, after I had received the report of his company, I sent word to his CEO asking for more information. Jeremy called and suggested that we meet together with his CEO at a restaurant. Since it was a business meeting, I went. But I was surprised when I entered the reserved dinner room that only Jeremy was there. "I'm sorry," he explained, "my boss was called away, but I am more than capable of handling things myself." I hid my dissatisfaction and took my seat. This was unprofessional behavior. Jeremy's position in the company, while enough to introduce the investment to me, was not enough to sit at a dinner with me to discuss it. It was insulting, and though I suspected that he would try to leverage on our shared history, I kept my cool. We discussed business for a while and he handed me the required documentation in a folder. All that was left was to finish our dinner. "I would like to propose a toast to you, Hera," Jeremy said. "You have become a successful businesswoman worthy of every respect and honor." I lifted my glass and took a sip. "You look even more beautiful than you ever did before," he said. "Thank you. You don't look too bad either. Do you ever think of how things would have been if we had gotten married? If Liza had not come between us?" "Jeremy, why are you digging up the past?" "Because I regret it. I have been regretting it for years, and since I saw you at your office last week, I have not been able to stop thinking of you." "Why do you regret it?" I asked, curious to hear how he would defend himself. Because you have become the woman I would be proud to be with. I smiled and shook my head, disgusted at his shamelessness. I picked up my bag and stood. Good night, I said, and left the restaurant. The next day there was a large bouquet of roses on my desk when I walked into my office. The attached cards said they were from Jeremy. I had them placed in vases and used to decorate the outer office. I had my secretary call New Horizons to inform them that I had their answer, and to ask them to send someone other than Jeremy to receive it. They sent Jeremy the following day. I considered refusing to meet with him since I had specifically asked for someone else to be sent. This showed a great disrespect to me, while they were requesting for me to finance their company. However, I went ahead and met with him together with the relevant directors in my company, and he was not able to conceal his disappointment and anger at receiving our negative response. He waited until the meeting was over, however, before accosting me after the directors had left. Aren't you going against best practice by punishing my company because of our past? Jeremy Yao, I said, cutting him off. This is why I asked for your company to appoint a different liaison officer. I did not want them to think that I was reacting out of anger when I gave my answer. But you are reacting out of anger. You need to let bygones be bygones. The decision was taken by my board of directors and not by me. We considered your proposal and your financial books, and discovered things that it would be in your interest to keep quiet about. Based on these things, the board decided that you are too high of a risk to invest in. If you cannot accept this, then there is nothing more to say between us. Good day. I was on my feet and I was angry. This is why I left you back then. Jeremy shouted. You were always so emotional, so clingy, and so foolish. You were a fool then and you are a fool now. You will destroy your company if you continue this way. I advise you to find yourself a man to handle things for you because you are completely incapable yourself. I was going to give him an appropriate answer, but I felt the anger leave me as I looked at him. Such an empty shell. Such a hypocrite. He surely did not deserve for me to dignify him anymore. I went to my desk and pressed the emergency button. Within seconds, my secretary, my driver, and one of my male staff were in my office. I said in an even voice, please escort Mr. Yao out, and note that I will not personally receive any calls from New Horizons henceforth. Direct all their calls to Director O. Yes, ma'am, answered my secretary. She turned to Jeremy. This way, Mr. Yao, if you please. Jeremy glared at me, turned around and stomped out. I relayed the entire episode to my mother that evening. I had not told her when he first came to my office because I did not want her to bias me. I wanted to separate my personal feelings from my private ones, and I had successfully proven to myself that I was truly over him. A few days later she told me that she had made inquiries and found out that Jeremy had been fired from his lucrative job at the oil company due to embezzlement. He had settled out of court and avoided jail, and had then been introduced by a friend to New Horizons. New Horizons itself had been caught red-handed in a sting operation organized by the Nigerian government involving an enslavement, torture, bribery and cover-up scandal, and the management staff had been sued at the International Criminal Court. I heard the news and rejoiced at having avoided his manipulations and dodged a bullet. Within 2 months after that, Anderson and I were married. It was a small, simple ceremony, and we honeymooned by the sea. We came back to the news that Jeremy had been arrested and was facing criminal charges that would land him several years in jail for criminal embezzlement. All this was 5 years ago. Since then, I have relinquished management of my company into the able hands of my sweet husband Anderson, who I love more and more every year. I maintain my shares in it, however, and I go into work whenever I feel like it. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying exploring other hobbies and spending time with my twin boys. Speaking of which, I'm having contractions now and I need to head to the hospital. I'm having a girl this time. Anderson's mom has come over to babysit the twins, so I have to stop writing now. Cheers.
If you liked this story, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps others find the channel. Thanks.